Welcome to Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast with Alexia Leachman, the weekly 9-month podcast to help parents-to-be look forward to their fear-free childbirth. Alexia is a pregnancy and head trash clearance coach and the author of Fear-Free Childbirth, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy and a Positive, Pain-Free Birth. As a mum who's had 2 fear-free and pain-free births, Alexia wants to share with you how she overcame her pregnancy and childbirth fears so that you can look forward to having a fear-free birth too. Over the 9-month life of this podcast, Alexia will be sharing some real-life stories from mums and dads, insights into the latest childbirth research, inspiring tales from birth professionals, and some tips and techniques for clearing your fears and stresses. If you would like to receive a free chapter from her book, then head over to fearfreechildbirth.com, where you can also sign up for her email series, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy. But now, it's time for the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman. Thank you so much for joining me today. Well, here we are at episode 39, so coming very, very close to the end of the first season here on the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. Now, I am already planning season 2, and one of the big pieces that I need to try and get in place for season 2 is some sponsors. I'm looking for some sponsors for season 2. So if you would like to reach mums-to-be, pregnant mamas, midwives, I've got a lot of midwives listening to the show as well, and doulas, then if you would like to reach them and let them hear your message, then get in touch with me at the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast and just email me at alexia@fearfreechildbirth.com and you can, just get in touch. So yeah, I'm already looking at episodes. I've got a load of stuff already planned for season 2 that I'll be starting in early 2016. My goodness, that doesn't seem that far away actually. So I do need to get my skates on, but I'm concentrating right now on getting to you the rest of season 1. And today I've got a really, really great episode for you. I've got a positive birth story to share with you today. And today I'm going to be sharing with you Cath's gentle C-section story. Now, the thing about this story is I think it's just so important for so many mums, or every single mum, to listen to, and actually midwives, medical staff as well, because I think there's so much for all of us to learn from listening to how Cath prepared for her birth. Cath had 2 emergency C-sections before, so this is her 3rd pregnancy, and after having pregnancies, births that didn't go that brilliantly and turned out into emergency C-sections, she really wanted to make sure that she planned as best as she could. So you can hear all about what she did to plan. But I think the reason why I want to urge every mum-to-be to listen to this is the simple fact is that birth is so unpredictable. We just simply don't know how our births are going to go. And many of you plan for your home births, or you plan for your hospital births, or a plan for a vaginal birth. But there isn't that much planning that's gone into what happens if, what happens if things don't go to plan? What happens if you end up having an emergency C-section? And often it's when things go off plan that women start feeling like they're losing control of their birth, that they're no longer having a say, that they're feeling sort of almost directed by the medical teams and told what to do. And this loss of control that can really start contributing to feelings of postnatal depression and feelings of trauma around your birth experience. So to help to protect you from not experiencing those things, I think it's really important to try and do some of this planning and preparation up front. And so even if you're not planning to have a C-section, even if you're planning on a vaginal birth, then it's important to give some thought to how you'd like it to unfold if it is going to go that way, so that if it does, you still feel like you have an element of control about what's going on, and that you still feel good and positive about your birth, because that is going to really help you so much in that post-birth phase. And of course, if you don't need it, well, it doesn't matter. You've sort of prepared for every possible outcome, and that's the most important thing, that you feel prepared, and that means that that fear won't show up on the day, that if things go differently, you feel okay about that because you're prepared. And that is how we can really start to take away the fear from our own birth experiences. So this is why I think it's really important for all mums to listen to this positive birth story from Cath, who shares her positive, gentle C-section story. So some of the things that Cath talks about, what is a gentle C-section, what that was for her, what she ended up having, and how she felt about that, what she would do differently if she could do it again. And she also talks about she had a placenta smoothie as well, so she talks a little bit about that. And also, because she's got 2 little ones under 7, then handling how breastfeeding with another little one and the newborn and all that as well. So really a lot of really good stuff that Cath is going to be sharing during the chat that I have with her today. So without further ado, here's the time that I spoke to Cath about her gentle, positive C-section story. I hope you enjoy it. Well, welcome, Cath, to the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's okay.
Now, you're going to be coming here today to share your gentle caesarian story, and I really can't wait to hear it, because I've heard about it, but I've not heard it from you yet, so I'm really, really looking forward to this. But before you dive into all that, would you mind just sort of telling the listeners a little bit about, who you are, what your family life is like, just so they get a little bit of sense of who is Cath?
I'm Cath. Family life is manic, but good fun. I have 3 under the age of 7.
Wow.
And Dave, my partner.
Now, in terms of sharing your story, you're going to be sharing your caesarean story from little Jacob, I believe, yeah?
Yeah.
So just sort of, take us back a little bit in the whole story of Jacob. Would you mind what was it like when you first found out that you were pregnant with Jacob?
I think I was really pleased, because I kind of hoped that we would be pregnant then, and we planned to be pregnant then, well, as far as you can plan, but I just had this feeling that we were going to get pregnant then, and we did. But I think out of all 3 of them, even though I kind of should have known that I was pregnant, I couldn't believe that I was, so I probably tested about 8 times.
Oh, really?
Dave doesn't even know I tested that many times. I was just like, I can't believe I actually am pregnant. I can't believe I am pregnant. Let's do it again. Oh, I am. I think probably I started testing from 10 days, so I was a bit early. But yeah, I was really excited, because I was really sure that we were going to have a 3rd.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good.
And how was the early part of your pregnancy?
It wasn't too bad. I've been doing lots of work with a holistic health coach, and kind of doing lots of really green smoothies and things. And I just went overnight, went off them, didn't want to eat them anymore. But it was really weird how my diet changed straight away. Even though I wanted to be healthy, I just couldn't face a green smoothie. It was like, I don't want that.
Wow. So you were having a green smoothie diet while you were conceiving, then, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, fab. So that was a great kind of little backdrop for Jacob to make an appearance, I'd imagine. Yeah, amazing. So your diet changed completely. Did it go healthy? Did it stay healthy, or did it go a bit naughty?
It was very naughty. Probably the healthiest pregnancy I'd had, because with the other 2 I was on dairy, but I was eating dairy, and I craved dairy, and I was eating cheese. It was just, everything was cheese. But then we found out that Michael was intolerant to dairy when he was about 6 months old, so I stopped eating dairy then. Right. And hadn't gone back onto it. So I was a bit worried about what I was going to crave in pregnancy, because I wanted cheese all the time, but actually I didn't really crave very much. I craved things like, I went through a stage of craving avocados, and then I went through a craving for hummus, but it would last for a week, and then I'd go off it and not want it anymore. I think probably my worst craving was Cocoa Pops with almond milk, which my health coach would be horrified. She will be horrified if she listens to this, but yeah.
We won't tell her.
Well, I've got to tell her, she's part of the journey. A very important part of the journey. But yeah, no, I just was like, no, I can't eat. I don't know what it was. I just had to. I think it was more, again, it was probably about milk, but almond milk. And it was a really nice way to eat it, but crunchy. So I did have about a week where I was like, that's what I've got to eat.
So the cravings were quite noticeable, but did you have any symptoms or any pregnancy symptoms, or was it quite an easy pregnancy otherwise?
I was quite lucky, really, on the whole. With all of them, I'd never really had much in the way of morning sickness. Yeah. I felt queasy, but as long as I kept eating. So I think probably the biggest problem is I did put on quite a lot of weight in all my early pregnancies. But yeah, I was doing Kundalini with Emily until I was about 6 weeks pregnant,
Wow.
or 7 weeks, and then I just suddenly my body just went, no, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah. So
Like,
Emily's the
that's it.
yoga. Emily, that Cath just referred to, is the yoga mama who shared her story. Oh, right at the beginning of the podcast, and that's how we know each other. So just so the listeners know what you mean when you're saying you did Kundalini with Emily, just so they know what's going on. So tell us, what about your emotional journey then during the pregnancy? How are you feeling about your the pregnancy as unfolding, and also handling the fact that you had 2 other little ones that you had to handle and deal with?
Yeah, that was fun. Because I was still breastfeeding Michael.
Wow.
So kind of balancing his needs with my needs of exhaustion. It was okay. I was really excited. I was really pleased. I knew there was going to be a bit of a journey around what choice I made for labour, because I didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay.
So I was kind of bracing myself for that. But I had quite a heavy bleed with Jacob at just under 8 weeks, which I hadn't had with the other 2. Like, it was quite significant, where I just suddenly started bleeding and was like, oh, I was convinced that I'd lost the baby. For about 4 days. I had to wait until I could get a scan, and I kind of couldn't believe it when she said, oh no, a good heartbeat there. I was like, oh, okay then.
Wow.
But I really didn't think that I was going to be pregnant anymore, so that was quite so it was probably from that point of view I was a bit more nervous, even though I thought I knew what to expect. I realised actually I haven't got a clue what to expect. Anything could happen. So I was quite glad that by that point I had stopped doing yoga, because I knew it wasn't related to that. But it was, that was probably the worst. And then up from that I had a really bad ear infection. So actually the hardest part, most of the pregnancy, I was partly deaf and trying to deal with 2 kids and deal with appointments, and I was going to appointments going, I really can't hear you.
Oh dear.
So that was a bit strange. So because I couldn't take anything either, it made it a lot harder.
So you mentioned that you're working with a health coach.
Yeah.
Was that throughout your pregnancy?
I started doing that really when I went dairy free with Michael. I came across and started doing sort of like oh no. Guess who's awake? He knows I'm talking about him. But yeah, I started working with Rochelle really because I just thought, well, if I'm taking dairy out, I've got to make sure that I'm putting the right things in.
So how far back was that? When you said when Michael went dairy free, how long ago was that then?
3.5 years ago.
Right, okay. So you've been working with a health coach for about 3.5 years.
Yeah, probably about 3 years. I think I came across it because I wasn't happy with the information I was given from the dietitians. And I just thought, well, I don't really want soya. Soya didn't really feel like it was working.
So in terms of the, as your pregnancy was progressing then, another thing you mentioned earlier was that, you weren't sure how it was going to go, and therefore you were going to have to make some decisions. So what did you mean by that?
Well, because I'd had the 2 previous C-sections and they both ended up, Hannah's C-section was really long, after really long labour, and I've been in labour for something like 30 hours.
Wow.
And just knew I wasn't progressing, and I totally couldn't cope with the pain. And then they got to the point where they say, actually, we're a bit concerned about the baby now. So I was like, right, C-section, go for it. That's fine. But in that birth, I was absolutely terrified. I was completely convinced that the baby was not going to be born. I didn't realise quite how in depth I had that fear until after I had Michael, and I realised that I hadn't actually ever read the bit about where you bring the baby home in the book that I had. When I read it with him, I realised that I'd never seen those pages before.
Wow.
I don't think I'd ever looked past 40 weeks.
Yeah.
Because I was convinced that I wasn't coming home with the baby.
Oh, really?
So it was like this massive fear of death, because we'd had a lot of loss in the family the year before. I think it was just like, no, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like now, I can't even think why I was that terrified, but I was. So that probably didn't really help. I was stressed and worried about it all. So the labour wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So that kind of didn't help really. I mean, because I'd done lots of preparation for it. Like, I've been doing yoga through the pregnancy, and I did yoga birth preparation and NCT, and I had all the information to hand, but it just, I don't know, like, I just couldn't imagine that it was ever going to happen. So I think all of that had like a knock-on effect over it. But then I thought, well, I know that I wasn't as mentally prepared for whatever reason then. So when I was pregnant with Michael, I did a lot more, and I did the hypnobirthing and really use that. And I used that in labour, and it was brilliant, and it worked really well. But again, with Hannah, I'd only got to 8 centimetres and didn't get any further. And then with Michael, I got to 8.5 really, really quickly. But then when he went back to back, and I knew that he changed, I was like, right, I just knew that it had changed. Then, so I knew, like with Jacob, I knew that the previous two had basically had kind of similar patterns, and I'd only got to a certain point.
Right.
And it just kind of, I just felt like, kind of like a repeating pattern. I felt like, and actually at the end of my pregnancy with Michael, one of my yoga teachers said to me about actually sometimes you can do everything you want to change, to try and turn the baby, but sometimes the baby's trying to give you a message.
Yeah.
And I think, well, maybe they were trying to give me a message that we're not going to get out for whatever reason. So when I was thinking about having another pregnancy, I was kind of thought, we might have to look at it.
Okay.
So I arranged to have a debrief with the consultant, and I knew they were always talking to me from my notes, but I didn't realise I'd never seen them, so I kind of wanted to match up and see what it was that they were actually talking about, which was really, really helpful.
At what point did you decide that you're going to have a C-section then in your pregnancy?
About 20 weeks.
At 20 weeks, okay.
Yeah, after the kind of big scan, and I actually saw the consultant and went through all those notes and went, right, well, what are the options here? Because I had a very good consultant who in my previous pregnancy been really happy, and go for it with a natural birth if you can, that'd be brilliant. But I thought, if I see him and he's saying, no, I really think this is the best option, I know he's so pro natural birth, I just felt that if he was R-ing, then that was probably the safest, really, and the most sensible. But I had to go through a process to even get my head around that, like talking to other friends who were kind of involved in birthing and working with pregnant women, and really, I think I knew that I wanted to plan it, and if I was going to have a C-section, I was going to plan it really well, so it could be the best possible C-section. But I was worried that I was going to end up regretting not being in labour, because I really enjoyed being in labour with both of them. Of the older two, so I was worried about missing out on how I was going to feel. And also I did have very helpful comments of, but why are you having a plan section? You've never pushed. And from friends. But I fortunately had a lot of people around me who were far more supportive than that, so it kind of helped.
So sorry, carry on.
No, I was going to say I had to go through a real process of grieving pregnancy, and it was weird. I kind of felt like that, and then actually I spoke to somebody else who kind of said they'd experienced it as a grief of having to grieve not delivering vaginally, which actually I look back now and think, it doesn't matter, I've got babies, doesn't matter now. But at the time it felt really important. I think it was just because I wanted to give him the best possible chance.
Yeah. No, I was speaking to another mum whose story I'll be sharing on the podcast as well, and she was saying that exact same thing, that she was grieving not having that vaginal birth experience, and that's what she struggled with the most after she had an emergency caesarean. And it sounds to me like that's a very sort of normal thing for someone to experience. As odd as you may have found it at the time, it sounds like it's something that's quite typical.
Yeah, I think as well I had a lot of comments from people, because I live kind of like a baby wear and a cloth nappy, and I eat kind of fairly vegan-y ways, and probably don't live the most conventional lifestyle. I suppose people call me a hippie, and do lots of yoga and alternative therapies and work for a leader and all, it's all kind of a natural lifestyle. So people are always like, oh, but I thought you'd have done a home birth. Like, well, almost because you tick all those boxes, then you can't be a proper hippie unless you home birth. And I was like, but yeah. One of my friends said something about how the lady that was going to do my placenta said that her sister had that kind of experience of, actually what matters is that I deliver my baby and bring my baby home. Like, I'm not going to get any medals for going through labour if it's not the right thing to do.
So you decided to go for the elective C-section.
Yeah.
And so you had quite a bit of time then to plan for your C-section, and if you made that decision at 20 weeks. So I'm interested really in, and you said you hinted earlier on in the chat that you planned to start planning. So I'm really curious as to what you went through as part of your planning process.
Well, it was kind of like, well, how am I going to negotiate this? Are they going to be able to do it? What do I need to find out if I want them to be able to do it for me. And I'm fortunate because I've spoken to an independent midwife, and I knew that she'd had a previous client under my consultant who had had a gentle C-section. So I kind of made sure that I had all the information to hand when I went to the appointments so I could discuss it. But I didn't really need to because he already knew what I was talking about and was quite happy to do it that way. But it was kind of like slow delivery. So basically all they did was pull his head out and then the Syntocin drip, and basically the womb contracted and pushed him out. So they didn't pull him out. He basically was birthed out. So that's like the most natural way you could be born, really.
So is that's how they define a gentle C-section, is to kind of allow the body to be doing a lot of the pushing?
Yeah. So basically they just pull like the head and shoulders out, and then the baby delivers himself. They're like very hands off, and you can see like in the photos that Dave took, you can see the photos that he, like, no one was touching him, he was just appearing.
Oh wow.
So it was quite different. And then also I wanted, if possible, to have the delayed cord clamping and immediate skin to skin and have him on me as long as I could. So that was all kind of like, well, that's the ideal. If everything's okay, then we can do that. Obviously, everything they agree to is on the condition that everything's okay. But that's fair enough. But
so you had lots of meetings with people just to make sure that you were sure and confident that they were hearing what you wanted, that it was well understood, and that they were kind of almost reaffirming it back to you that they understood and that would be okay. And so there was a lot of that going on, was there?
Yeah, and also, like, because I wasn't sure, and unfortunately I went to an appointment and he wasn't able to be there in an emergency, but I sat and waited and nobody told me for 3 hours. If I'd known that he wasn't there, I wouldn't have waited for that time. But and then when I got in, I kind of had the experience of being told that I had to or the baby would die, which was like, well, actually, no, I'm not being told I have to do anything. And that almost made me go, right, well, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm not going to do what I'm scaremongered into. I'm not making a decision on this until I've had a proper conversation where I'm treated like an adult and you treat me like an adult. And in the process of that, I actually spoke to the supervising midwife as well, which was really helpful because I then felt like I had an advocate and I knew what I could ask for reasonably. On what the processes were going to be in the hospital as well. So that helped. Like, I wasn't going in demanding everything I wanted if it wasn't reasonable, but I knew that actually what I was asking for wasn't unreasonable. So it kind of gave me more confidence to be able to ask for it. So like it helped to have those conversations.
Yeah. So did you have quite a detailed birth preferences document then?
It wasn't too detailed because I thought, well, actually, they'll probably never read it. But I did kind of highlight the key things that I wanted. But they already seemed to be on it. They knew the research that I was kind of referring to.
Okay.
As well, like when I had the kind of let's go for it. I think that was about 24 weeks. That he was like, oh yeah, have you seen that? I read this article, and he knew what I was talking about, so I knew then that I didn't have to worry anymore, really.
Okay.
So, but I mean, there were a few times I kind of had to say, like, I really would like this to happen. Is that going to happen? Is it going to be possible? And even on the day, I was still a bit like, I am definitely having him, aren't I? I'm not having anyone else.
Okay.
But actually, they were brilliant. They really seemed to be on the ball with it.
So would you mind just running through again some of your not demands, but the things that you wanted as part of your planned C-section then, just to sort of recap a bit for people listening?
Okay, the main thing really was kind of the slow delivery. So they basically took out his head and shoulders and let him then be pushed out by my womb contracting rather than pulling him out. So kind of as natural as you can get, really. And then once he was born, I wanted him to be put on directly onto me for skin to skin, but obviously that was going to kind of be, well, depends how long his cord is. It might only have been on my legs or on my tummy, but I was like, I don't care as long as he's on me. And then delayed cord clamping, and then just to be left on me as long as possible, really. Not cleaned up, just left on me.
And did you have anything in there around the lighting or the number of people in the room, anything like that?
Yeah, well, I've written down that I would like it to be quiet when he was born. I just had a CD of actually of yoga mantras and like nice songs and things that I liked on. That was on, and when he was born, it was completely silent in the room, and they turned the light down as much as they could, and it was brilliant. They were spot on with it. So I was kind of aware of, actually, for safety, there needs to be X amount of people in the room. So I never even really thought about that. I know some people do, but I just knew that the people were there that needed to be there, and as long as Dave was there, I didn't really care who else was there.
Yeah. And where was your partner positioned in the room during all of this?
He was head end next to me.
Okay.
Taking photos, which he wasn't that happy about because they dropped the drape. He was like, "Oh," but he took loads. I don't think he actually looked. He was kind of just taking photos because I couldn't see. Oh, he did look, apparently. He's just said.
Oh, he did.
I think actually when it was in the moment, he was quite fascinated by watching the baby being delivered, which we hadn't had before because we always had the drape up.
Right. Okay.
So, but they dropped that.
Right,
I couldn't see over it. He could.
And are you pleased about that? Or
Yeah.
not? Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was never one for wanting to cut the cord, but I'm glad that he got, at least one of us got to see that, and he was able to then take the photos at least.
Yeah.
And the photos are amazing, really.
Really?
I was hoping we were allowed to video it, but we weren't.
No. So you had nice music playing, and it was really nice and quiet in there. And so did they turn the lights down a bit, or was it? Yeah,
they had to turn them up, obviously, to begin with, so we could see what he was doing with everything, and sighting the epidural and what have you. The whole thing from start to finish, like as soon as you walked down there, they were all like really excited to see you and treated you like a film star, and it just made you feel right at home. I think that was the hardest thing, the thing I'm not looking forward to, because with the other two I had so much adrenaline I didn't really notice them doing the epidural, but because I kind of walked in cold, it was like, oh yeah, you're going to put a big needle in my back. And actually trying to get comfortable when you've got a big belly, I couldn't get far enough forward to get it in, but once they got it in, it was fine. It was all systems go, really.
So I just realised we didn't really talk about you sort of rocking up to the hospital on the day, because this is a day that would have been in your diary for weeks, I would imagine, was it?
Yeah.
So
it was, yeah.
And how was that then, kind of, I guess for your other two pregnancies, because it ended up being an emergency, you sort of went through what a lot of women go through, which is, when's baby arriving? I have no idea. Yeah. And suddenly now you kind of had a fixed day in your head that you knew it was definitely happening. What was that like compared to your other pregnancies?
Well, that was really great because I got to choose the date. But we had a conversation about like booking it, and I was offered the Monday the 17th, but because Michael had been 10 days early, and that was going to kind of be, he was then 8 days, he was born 8 days early in the end, Jacob was. I didn't really want to leave it and go over the weekend and then risk going into labour over the weekend. Yeah. So I was kind of like, if we can do it on Friday, that would be really good. And actually it was great because it was 14/11/14, so he's got a really cool date of birth.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
So I was like, yeah, I like that. That's good. So I kind of had that date in my head even from when I first got pregnant. I was like, yeah, they're the dates, that's when he's due. If I had a C-section, I'll probably have him then. So I kind of knew really from where to go.
Oh, wow. So was that like a week? How many weeks was that then? Was that a week before his due date?
Yeah, it was 8 days.
8 days before his due date. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, quite, knowing exactly when little one's going to make an appearance must be quite something.
It was quite helpful as well, like with the other two. We dropped them off to mum and dad the night before and went home and watched telly and went to bed and got up really early and went to the hospital and got checked in, and that was it.
Yeah. So how long did it unfold then from the time that you got to the hospital to when you had little Jacob?
We arrived about 6:30, I think, 7, and went straight to the ward, and then kind of had to do everything. I think he was born at 11:48, so we went down to theatre at about 11:15.
Okay.
So that kind of 3-hour period felt like forever. And they kept coming and telling us, they're waiting, they've got someone in delivery, they're thinking might need theatre, so we're just going to wait. And I think they had to take someone to theatre for whatever reason, and then they came up and said, we're ready, and it was just like, oh, really? I'm going to have a baby in a minute, oh my God. So that was a bit weird.
How is that then? Yeah, like, that is a bit weird. Now you just said it like that. That does sound a bit like, oh my goodness, it's like in half an hour and 45 minutes he'll be here,
Yeah, it was a bit, oh crikey, I've got to yeah, I'm gonna go down and have a baby like now. But it was exciting. It was good, and it was quite nice to kind of just calmly walk down and just walk into theatre and like walk through the doors, and everyone was like, "Oh, hi, we're here for you," and they took Dave off to get him in his scrubs, and it just, I kind of felt like a celebrity, and they were all like chattering away, and it just was really nice. I felt like a queen.
So did you put that into your preferences, like, be really nice to me, welcome me in, and all that kind of stuff, or do you think that is that, I don't know? Like,
no, they just did that. They did that, and actually, a few people I've spoken to since said that they felt like that as well.
Oh,
like, it
brilliant.
was really, they were really excited, and
fab. So that really helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was like silly little things, like they put my name on the board, and then they drew a heart and wrote Dave. What's your partner's name? And then wrote Dave. So like on the board it says Cath loves Dave on the board, which are just like a little thing in the background of the photos, but it kind of included Dave as well as much as me.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that they, appreciated that he was important.
Yeah.
In the whole proceedings.
And so once little Jacob had appeared then, how did the sort of breastfeeding and all that kind of stuff, how did that go for you?
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
But it helped really, because once he came out and they put him on me, his cord was so long they could put him straight up on to my chest, and it was brilliant. So he was just there on me from word go, really.
Was he? Did he latch on okay?
Yeah, well, I couldn't get him in a good enough position to get him latched on straight away, but at least he was on me.
Yeah.
Because I had a funny moment where he kind of was squawking because he was on me. I knew he was okay. I could feel him breathing. I knew he was fine. But they were all a bit, he's not really crying very much. We need to just check he's okay now we've got his cord. And I was like, if you have to. But like the second they took him off of me, he just went, rah! Like, put me back! Yeah. And they were like, oh, he's okay then. And as soon as he went back on me, that was it. He was happy and just snuffled in, and he was absolutely fine. But I just think that just says such a lot about he's on me. He doesn't need to cry. What he wanted was to be on me. So he had no need to cry, really. But obviously they had to check he was okay. And then once we're in recovery, I was kind of like, I'm just going to breastfeed him now. And totally different to how it was with the other two.
Really?
Well, Hannah wouldn't latch on at all, probably because she'd had a massive, long labour.
Yeah.
Michael, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Whereas with Jacob, I'd fed Michael the night before, so with Jacob it was like, yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing, so that helped. Well, I think because I knew what I was doing, and there was obviously already milk there, it kind of helped. Yeah. And he just went straight on, and he knew what he was doing.
So I'm just thinking that, just as you said, there was milk already there, I'm just thinking, about the colostrum, that first bit of milk that's for the newborn. How does the body, does the body give you some of that for your new little baby, even if you're still breastfeeding? I don't know. This is something I've just realised. What happens?
It kind of just starts from about 32 weeks-ish, okay. I think. And it's funny, I noticed like when Michael, every time he'd had a really good feed, and then he'd be like gulping down water. I was like, is he not getting anything? But I knew he was. Yeah. He was dribbling it everywhere. And then actually a friend who's a midwife lent me Adventures in Tandem Nursing, and that was one of the things that said that the colostrum is so salty quite often they'll feed and then they'll want water.
Yeah. And I guess did you get the kind of crazy onslaught of loads of milk arriving in the first few days afterwards? Did that kind of happen to you?
It still took a little while, but what helped was that I had the placenta smoothie done, so I'd had that about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when he was born at nearly 12 o'clock, and by 4 o'clock I'd had that. I think Michael came in the second day and had milk, and I think that probably helped. There's a lot of milk.
The placenta smoothie then, just talk us through a little bit about that.
Yeah, I had somebody from the Placenta Encapsulation Network do it, so...
Okay, so what kind of smoothie was it, other than a placenta smoothie? Was it...
It was only a really small amount of placenta, but that was like all you needed in it. But it was almond milk, honey, lots of fruits, blueberries, raspberries, and it was delicious. I could drink it again. Brilliant.
So when you say it's only a small amount of placenta, what we talk, like, I'm just thinking, like the size of a blueberry, the size of a strawberry?
I think she's probably in like 10p's worth, I think. I can't remember. I don't know. She did it at home, so I don't
really
know.
Just a tiny amount then.
But that's all you need to kind of kick your iron levels back up, and
right.
As far as I know, that's what I've been told anyway.
And could you detect the flavour or taste, or is it just because you just had all that gorgeous fruit that you were drinking?
Yeah, no, it was great because I had like all the fruit and the honey. The honey really made it nice and sweet, so it was all.
So you didn't really notice that you were drinking that at all, I guess?
Oh no, I was like, I can have another one of these. I'll just make a few of them.
So has that helped with your recovery then, taking placenta like that?
I think it did. I still had a long recovery and ended up with an infection because I think Michael unfortunately caught me with his knee and banged me. So I think that just irritated.
Okay.
But I don't think like the placenta wouldn't have made any difference to that. No. But
so if there's anybody listening that's kind of would like to plan for a gentle caesarean, what advice would you give them?
If they can find a positive birth group, that was really, really helpful.
Okay.
Just because it was a really positive mindset, whatever kind of birth you're having.
So like a positive birth movement, one of those groups.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was really good. And I didn't actually make it to Nottingham Home Birth Group, but I was on the Facebook group, and that was really helpful because there were other people that had gone through it.
Yeah.
And just there's a gentle caesarean Facebook group as well.
Okay.
And that was really good because I got to read other people's stories, and reading those other stories was really good. Just I'm like, actually, these people have done it and they've had a really positive experience, so it's not going to be such a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think. There's a really good film. I can't think what the link is. If I find it, I'll send it to you. But there's a really good film that I watched just after I'd had Michael, actually, about, they actually film one in London at a hospital, and I just thought, actually, that's how Jacob's was. It was lovely. And it just made me go, that's a lot better than I thought it would be if I had a planned one. So
yeah. And so now when you think about your birth, it sounds like, it does sound like an incredibly positive experience for you. And is there anything that you would have changed or done differently, even despite it being so wonderful? Is there anything that maybe you think, I could have done that as well? Or
there's the gut microbe bacteria.
Okay.
I'd only kind of just started hearing about what you can do, and I didn't kind of get my head around it beforehand. So I think with C-section babies, you kind of lose some of that flora that you get.
Yeah,
gut flora.
Canal,
yeah. So I kind of wish I'd known a bit more about that, and I just didn't get my head round looking at it. I took him to see I went to the chiropractor anyway after I'd had him, and he got a free check, and she was pretty wow. You can't tell he was born by a C-section. So that kind of just reaffirmed to me.
So what did she mean by that then? What did she mean by that?
Well, I think particularly C-section babies tend to be quite pulled about and twisted and tugged. Okay. And I mean, he was in quite a strange position as well. He had his cord around his neck, and because it was such a long one, I think, and he was kind of back to back, and he was breeched, but he had his legs right up under his armpits, and he was really in a stuck position. He was like, I'm going to have to put him a bit, because I'm not going to get him to a position to deliver. So in a way, again, that kind of reaffirmed to me. I kind of had the sense from word go that actually I needed to have the planned C-section, but I think it was more fear of what other people would say, which was totally the wrong attitude. And that was kind of part of the grieving process. I had to get rid of that fear of what other people were going to say about the way I delivered him, and just do what was right. And actually, but I just kind of had this sense that he had to be born, and that he had to be born that day. And I just think, well, if he'd gone into labour and he was in that position, what kind of trouble would we have ended up in? Yeah. So I'm really glad that I kind of listened to what my body was going, no, he needs to be born then.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Cath, for sharing your story. It really is lovely to hear such a positive caesarean story. So thank you very much for coming on the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast.
Thank you for having my story.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Cath and her gentle C-section story. Now, she shared a lot of really great resources during that chat. So if you want to get the show notes for today's episode, then you go to fearfreechildbirth.com/Cath, C-A-T-H, super simple. And there is also a YouTube video as well of a gentle C-section, and also there are some really great links that we've shared as well with some articles. There's some stuff about the gut flora and the microbiome that she talked about towards the end of our chat. So yes, there's lots of great resources and things that Cath shared during the chat. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you again next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman from the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. If you enjoyed the show, she'd really love it if you left a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or shared it with a friend. And don't forget, to get a free chapter from her book, head over to fearfreechildbirth.com to get your copy, as well as finding other episodes in this podcast and more about how Alexia can help you with pregnancy and birth preparation coaching. Until next time.